The Dictator Reality. All right, let's dive into the rise of a big-shot dictator and how it shook up the country. Imagine a time when a ruler, let's call them Big Boss, started calling all the shots. They didn't care about playing fair or asking anyone else for their opinion. Nope, it was their way or the highway. So, how did Big Boss rise to power? Well, they often used force and fear to get what they wanted. It's like they said, "I'm taking over, and there's nothing you can do about it." They didn't care about the rules, and they definitely didn't care about what anyone else thought. It was all about them and their hunger for power. Now, when Big Boss took the reins, things changed big time in the country. People were scared to speak up or share their thoughts. Big Boss made sure everyone knew who was in charge, and it wasn't the people. It's like they were constantly shouting, "You better do what I say or else." And that's not a fun way to live, is it? The impact on the country was huge. Big Boss made all the decisions, and they didn't always have the people's best interests at heart. They might have focused on their own power and wealth, leaving the rest of the country struggling. It's like they were saying, "I'll do whatever it takes to stay in control even if it hurts you." And that's just not right. But you know what? The people didn't take it lying down. They found ways to resist and fight back. They used protests, strikes, and other tactics to show that they wouldn't be bossed around. It's like they were shouting, "We won't let you walk all over us." Their bravery and determination were truly inspiring. In the end, Big Boss might have seemed tough and scary, but they were really just an insecure bully. They tried to control everything, but the people always found a way to stand up to them. It's like they were saying, "You might have power, but you can't control us." And that's the real power of the people. So, when we look at the rise of a notorious dictator and the impact on the country, we see that even the biggest bosses can't keep the people down forever. People will always find a way to fight for their freedom and stand up for what's right. It's like a big game of cat and mouse, and the people are the ones who always come out on top in the end. Keep fighting the good fight. Sure thing. Let's dig into how those big-shot dictators keep everyone in line and squash any opposition. It's like they're playing a game of, "I'm the boss and you better listen to me." So, how do these dictators keep their grip on power? Well, they use all sorts of sneaky tactics. They might control the media, spreading their own messages and shutting down any opposing views. It's like they're saying, "You'll only hear what I want you to hear." They also create a fear factor, making people too scared to speak out. It's like they're constantly reminding everyone, "Don't you dare challenge me." But that's not all. Dictators love to have a tight grip on the military and police. They use them to silence anyone who dares to raise their voice against them. It's like they're shouting, "I've got the power, and I'll use it to keep you in line." They also play dirty by using secret police to spy on people and crush any signs of rebellion. It's like they're saying, "I'll know what you're up to, and I'll shut you down." And let's not forget about the good old propaganda. Dictators love to spread lies and exaggerations to make themselves look like heroes and their opponents look like villains. It's like they're shouting, "I'm the best, and everyone else is the worst." They also love to create a cult of personality, making themselves seem like larger-than-life figures that no one should dare to challenge. It's like they're saying, "I'm the one and only, and you better worship me." Now, what happens to anyone who dares to stand up to these dictators? Well, they face intimidation, imprisonment, and even worse. It's like the dictators are screaming, "I'll crush anyone who crosses me." They make sure that anyone who opposes them knows that they'll face serious consequences. But you know what? People are pretty amazing. Even under the thumb of these dictators, they find ways to resist and fight back. They might use underground movements, protests, or even humor. to show that they won't be silenced. It's like they're shouting, "We won't let you bully us." In the end, these dictators might seem all-powerful, but they're really just insecure bullies. They'll do whatever it takes to stay in control, but the people always find a way to stand up to them. It's like they're saying, "You might think you're in charge, but we won't let you control us." And that's the real power of the people. Keep standing strong. Dictators, wow, they're quite something, aren't they? Let's take a peek into the mind of a dictator and figure out what makes them tick. What drives their behavior? It's a pretty fascinating topic, if you ask me. First off, dictators often have a deep-seated need for power and control. It's like they're always craving more, and they'll do anything to get it. They have this intense desire to dominate others and make sure everyone bows down to them. It's like they're on a power trip, you know? Then there's the whole ego thing. Dictators usually have inflated egos, like they think they're the best thing since sliced bread. They want everyone to worship them and feed their ego all the time. It's like they can't handle any criticism or opposition because it hurts their precious ego. But wait, there's more. Dictators also tend to be really paranoid. They're always looking over their shoulder, afraid that someone's out to get them. They'll do whatever it takes to stay in power, even if it means crushing anyone who dares to challenge them. It's like they're constantly living in fear, and that fear drives their behavior in a big way. And let's not forget about the whole narcissism thing. Dictators are often narcissistic, meaning they think they're better than everyone else. They lack empathy and don't care about the suffering of others. It's all about them and their own glory, no matter who gets hurt in the process. Now, what pushes these dictators to behave this way? Well, it's a mix of factors, really. Sometimes it's a troubled childhood or past trauma that shapes their mindset. Other times it's the desire for revenge or validation. And let's not overlook the influence of the people around them, like their inner circle of yes men who feed into their delusions of grandeur. But here's the thing. Understanding the psychological profile of a dictator doesn't excuse their behavior. It's important to recognize the harm they cause and work towards preventing their rise to power. We can't let their destructive tendencies run rampant, right? So, there you have it. The psychological profile of a dictator is a complex mix of power-hungry, egotistical, paranoid, and narcissistic traits. And the factors that drive their behavior? It's a combination of personal history, validation, and the influence of those around them. It's a wild ride into the mind of a dictator, that's for sure. Propaganda, oh boy, it's a powerful tool, isn't it? Let's dig into how it shapes public perception and makes a dictator's rule seem legit. It's a real eye-opener, trust me. First off, propaganda is like a big, flashy advertisement. It's all about spreading information, often biased or misleading, to influence people's thoughts and feelings. It's like a magic trick, making people believe something that might not be true at all. When a dictator uses propaganda, they're basically trying to control what people think. They want to mold public opinion in their favor, making themselves look like heroes and painting their opponents as villains. It's like they're trying to brainwash everyone into believing that they're the best thing since sliced bread. But how does propaganda actually work its magic? Well, it's all about repetition and manipulation. The more people hear something, the more they start to believe it. It's like when you hear a catchy song on the radio over and over again, it gets stuck in your head, right? That's what propaganda does, except it's not a fun tune, it's a sneaky message. And let's not forget about the manipulation part. Propaganda often plays on people's emotions, tugging at their heartstrings or stoking their fears. It's like a puppeteer pulling the strings, making people react the way the dictator wants them to. It's pretty sneaky, if you ask me. Now, here's the kicker. Propaganda doesn't just shape public perception, it also helps legitimize a dictator's rule. It's like a fancy stamp of approval, making everything they do seem totally okay. When people are bombarded with propaganda that glorifies the dictator and demonizes their opponents, it's no wonder they start to see the dictator as a savior, right? But wait, there's more. Propaganda also creates a sense of unity and loyalty among the people. It's like they're all drinking the same Kool-Aid, believing in the dictator's vision and standing by them no matter what. It's like a big mind-bending party where everyone's cheering for the dictator whether they like it or not. And here's the thing. Propaganda isn't just about spreading lies, it's also about silencing the truth. It's like a big, shiny curtain that hides all the ugly stuff going on behind the scenes. The dictator doesn't want people to see the real picture, so they use propaganda to spin a web of lies and distractions. So, what's the bottom line here? Propaganda is a powerful force that shapes public perception and makes a dictator's rule seem totally legit. It's like a sneaky magician's trick, making people believe whatever the dictator wants them to. It's a wild ride into the world of manipulation and mind games, that's for sure. Hey, let's talk about the serious stuff. Human rights violations under a dictator's rule. It's a real downer, but we need to shine a light on it and understand the long-term consequences. It's heavy stuff, but important to wrap our heads around. When a dictator's in charge, human rights often go out the window. It's like they forget that people have basic rights, like freedom of speech, fair treatment, and the right to live without fear. Instead, they do all sorts of nasty things to keep their grip on power, like cracking down on protests, censoring the media, and even resorting to torture and killings. It's like they're playing by their own twisted rules, and everyone else suffers. These violations have deep and lasting consequences. First off, there's the trauma and fear that people experience. It's like living in a constant state of anxiety, never knowing if you'll be the next target. It's a heavy burden to carry, and it can scar people for life. But it doesn't stop there. Human rights violations also tear at the fabric of society. It's like a big wrecking ball smashing through trust and unity. When people can't speak freely or trust the authorities to protect them, it creates a culture of fear and suspicion. It's a toxic environment that takes a toll on everyone, not just the direct victims. And let's not forget about the long-term effects. Human rights violations can leave a legacy of pain and division that lingers for generations. It's like a dark cloud that hangs over a country, shaping its future in a negative way. The scars of the past can take a really long time to heal, if they ever do. But here's the thing. Shining a light on these violations is a crucial step towards healing and change. By acknowledging the harm that's been done and holding the perpetrators accountable, it's possible to start rebuilding trust and working towards a better future. It's like turning on a spotlight in a dark room. Things start to become clearer, and hope begins to shine through. So, what's the bottom line here? Human rights violations under a dictator's regime have serious and long-lasting consequences. It's like a big, messy tangle that affects people's lives and the future of a country. But by facing these issues head-on, there's a chance to heal and move forward. It's a tough road, but it's one worth traveling. Let's talk about how a dictator's economic policies can affect a country's prosperity. It's super important to evaluate this stuff, you know? So, when a dictator is in charge, they have all the power. They can make big decisions about the economy without asking anyone else. That might seem efficient, but it can lead to some major problems. First off, dictators often focus on staying in power rather than what's best for the country. They might make policies that benefit themselves and their supporters, while ignoring the needs of the rest of the people. This can lead to inequality and unfairness, which isn't cool at all. Then there's the issue of corruption. Without anyone to keep them in check, dictators can do some shady stuff with money. They might take it for themselves or their pals instead of using it to help the country grow. That's a real bummer for everyone else. Plus, dictators might not be great at listening to experts or considering different ideas. They could stick to their own plans, even if they're not the best ones. This closed-mindedness can really hold back a country's progress. On the flip side, some dictators have managed to boost their country's economy in the short term. They might build big projects or bring in investments to make things look good. But often, these gains aren't sustainable and can lead to massive debt down the road. Overall, a dictator's economic policies can have a huge impact on a country's prosperity. It's not just about the numbers. It's about how those policies affect real people's lives. That's why it's super important to keep an eye on what's going on and speak up when things aren't right. In conclusion, when a dictator calls the shots on economic policies, it's a mixed bag. They might make some flashy moves, but they can also create a whole lot of problems. It's up to us to pay attention and push for change when things aren't working out. After all, we all deserve a fair shot at a prosperous future, right? Let's dive into the leadership styles of different dictators throughout history. It's pretty fascinating to see how these guys ran the show, don't you think? First up, we've got Adolf Hitler. He was all about that totalitarian vibe, meaning he had total control over everything. No room for disagreement or debate. It was his way or the highway. Plus, he was all about spreading his ideology through fear and force. Not a great approach, if you ask me. Then there's Joseph Stalin. He was a real tough cookie, too. His leadership style was all about crushing opposition and ruling with an iron fist. He made sure everyone knew who was boss, and anyone who dared to challenge him ended up in big trouble. Yikes! On the flip side, we've got someone like Benito Mussolini. He was also a dictator, but his style was a bit different. He focused on building a cult of personality around himself, kind of like a celebrity. He wanted everyone to see him as a strong, charismatic leader. Talk about an ego trip. Now, let's take a look at someone from a different part of the world, Mao Zedong. His leadership style was all about the masses. He wanted to connect with the common people and rally them behind his vision for China. It's like he saw himself as a champion of the people, even though his policies caused a whole lot of suffering. Moving on to a more recent figure, we've got Kim Jong-un. He's all about maintaining a tight grip on power and portraying himself as a larger-than-life figure. He's not afraid to flex his military muscle or use propaganda to keep his people in line. It's like he's playing a never-ending game of power politics. So, when we compare and contrast these leadership styles, we can see some common themes. They all wanted control, and they all used different tactics to maintain it. Whether it was through fear, charisma, or brute force, these dictators were determined to stay in charge. At the same time, their approaches had some major differences. Some focused on ideology, while others were more about personal power. Some were ruthless and brutal, while others tried to win over the masses with their charm. In the end, these leaders all left a lasting impact on their countries and the world. Their leadership styles shaped history and continue to influence how we think about power and authority today. It's a wild ride, exploring the highs and lows of dictator leadership, that's for sure. Let's chat about how the international community deals with dictators and the tricky business of intervening in their actions. It's a real roller coaster, so buckle up. When a dictator starts causing trouble, the international community has to figure out what to do. Sometimes they might use diplomatic pressure, like sanctions or negotiations, to try and get the dictator to change their ways. It's like a big game of persuasion and influence. But things get really complicated when talk turns to intervention, actually stepping in and taking action. There are a whole bunch of challenges that come with that. For starters, different countries might have their own interests at heart, so getting everyone on the same page can be a real headache. Then there's the question of legality. Intervening in another country's business is a major no-no under international law, unless there's a really good reason. It's like walking a tightrope. One wrong move, and you could end up causing more harm than good. Plus, there's the risk of making things worse. Intervening might seem like a good idea on the surface, but it can lead to all sorts of unintended consequences. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Things can go from bad to worse real quick. And let's not forget the human cost. Intervening in a dictator's actions can put a whole lot of people in harm's way, both in the dictator's country and among the intervening forces. It's a tough call to make when lives are on the line. Despite all these challenges, there have been times when the international community has stepped in to deal with dictators. Whether it's through military action, economic pressure, or diplomatic efforts, they've shown that they're willing to take a stand against injustice and oppression. At the same time, there have been plenty of cases where the international community has hesitated to intervene even when the situation seemed dire. This can lead to a whole lot of frustration and disappointment, especially for those who are suffering under a dictator's rule. In the end, the international community's response to dictators and the challenges of intervention are a real balancing act. It's about weighing the risks and benefits, considering the legal and ethical implications, and ultimately deciding on the best course of action. So, there you have it. Dealing with dictators and deciding whether to intervene is no walk in the park. It's a high-stakes game with no easy answers. But one thing's for sure, it's a conversation that's not going away anytime soon.